Hey guys, it's Beth here with Aging Care Solutions, offering experienced professional guidance and real family caregiving experience, as well as a host of life lessons and personal experience myself in certain areas. And I've tried, I'm sorry, I sound way better than I did, but because of this huge move and a lot of the big changes that are taking place in my life, I'm going to do a video about it too, is that stress and how it makes us sick. Because, oh, I am living proof of it. Anytime there has been like a huge event in my life, it used to be that my back went out. Now I get like bronchitis or pneumonia or, yeah. So, anyway, I'm recovering. I'm feeling way better. But today's topic I wanted to talk to you about because I have lived through this. I've lived through a lot of loss in my life. And then this was my chosen profession too, being in private duty nursing, home care, home health, and hospice. So, working with people who were experiencing grief was really a common area of connecting with my clients and people that I worked with. But finding ways to work through grief and how we can creatively grieve our hearts after we've lost a parent or a spouse or a family member is a process that we all have to go through. And the crux of it is that nobody can grieve your loss differently or better than you can, right? It's a very individualized process. And I'm looking through my notes because I have a really beautiful book that was written by a nun. And I have found it to be really helpful in my life. And one of the things that she points out is that absolutely no one can tell you how to grieve, that you're the only one who knows exactly what you need to be true to yourself. And these are just guidelines that I'm going to talk to you about today. And you're going to be able to choose what's right for you. But I would say that, trying to intentionally and actively process and coping with grief, and trying to heal from it, it's not just about feeling sad. It's about kind of doing, work that's going to be needed, whether it's emotional or psychological. For me, it's, spiritual and the foundational prayer work that I needed to do to come to terms with I'm not going to cry about the profound loss that we're going to feel when we lose someone really important to us, especially if it is a complete shock, right? Something so many times so unexpected, that it's just life-changing, right? And I think a lot of times, even though we have a parent that is aging and maybe they're in their 80s, 90s, even beyond, of course we expect that they're going to go. But I think for many people who are highly sensitive, or who maybe they were an only child and they have been caring for their loved one for so long, a lot of their existence was serving and caring, being the sole caregiver for their loved one. And so it's much deeper. The healing process for each of us is going to be very, very different, right? But when we lose a spouse or a parent or a close family member, grief can feel like a fog or a heavy weight that just won't lift. And it takes a long time. I mean, grief work can help us through this sense of loss. It can, we can integrate it into our life story, but finding ways to fully honor them, and what was lost is going to be an important aspect. I know it did for me. Like when I think about when my dad passed, he was such a well-known person in our community for for who he was. He sat on a local council board in my community for 18 years, and he had worked at the power company for 33 years. He was just well known. A lot of people knew my parents. They just did. They were just very involved in their communities, and very well known. So to me, it was like every time I was out, when I moved back home after college, and I was home for not quite a year, my dad died unexpectedly. Um, and they even asked me to fill his seat, and I was so grief stricken that I told them I was unable to do it. I struggled. Losing my dad was right after my brother, six and a half years after my brother died, was so impactful on me. I don't even know how I got through it. I don't even know how I graduated college. I still say this to this day. I think my angels guided me through that, because I don't even know how I did it. I was in such a fog for a long time. But I always say miracles happen. But the outline of what grief work looks like and what it involves is really accepting the reality of that loss. And it is hard. I mean, when you think about that person being so instrumental in your life and for so many years. And I used to think, my parents were the longest relationship I ever had in my life. Because at that point, that's really how it all unfolds. Your parents, for however long they live. So say your mom's 83 years old, and say you're in your 60s or you're 58 or something, you'll have known that person for 58 years, and even if you had siblings after it. So, you're going to be that one that remembered them, even if you couldn't remember as an infant. That was your longest relationship. So accepting the reality of that loss is, I'm not going to be able to get through this. I know I'm not. Because I think about, and I'm also not feeling great. So, but working through the pain and the grief and not avoiding it. I stayed with my mom for many years after my dad died. I lived with her, and, here I was single, and I was like, I'm never going to get married if I don't move out of your house, Mom. She's like, Mary Beth, you're fine. Don't you worry. I thought about buying a house in the area, but everything led me away from that terrible weather of upstate New York. We were almost to Canada, so it was brutal. And after living in Florida, I was like, you know what? I stayed long enough where I knew my mother was getting on her feet, and she had such a great group of friends, so it was a lot easier for me to move. But adjusting to a world without your lost loved one is something that takes a long time. I think it really, really does. For me, it did, because I kept being reminded by all the neighbors and the different people that I would see that would ask, how's your mom? How's everybody doing? And, just finding ways to maintain connections while moving forward for me was a lot easier, because I was working and my mother was working. And together we were kind of helping each other heal during the process after my dad passed. But a lot of people don't have that. Their children are, if you're in your 80s, your children are grown and maybe close to retirement. They're in they're in the last maybe decade of their work career, and they're raising kids. So many times you're alone. And these different stages, I think, are important. I mean, I think connecting with people, especially like if you can even talk to a therapist after a loss, can really help you with some of these tools that you're going to need. And also a lot of times as women get older, they have a circle of friends, and typically a lot of them are already widowed or widowers. But my mother was young. She was still in her 50s, but still, her friends, two of her friends were both widowed. I was really shocked when I learned that. One of her best friends, Sarah, they just had each other, and I was happy for that. They traveled, they did different things together. But one of the ways they talk about helping to find creative ways of healing a grieving heart is to do a memory box or a journal. A lot of times you'll go to someone's funeral and you'll see these beautiful collages, like huge poster boards of collages of the various stages and ages of life of that person. It could be when they were younger and they were athletic, and just the beautiful glamorous pictures of everybody when they were younger. And then when they get married and start having kids, just the the many, many, many years. I went to my friend Maureen's dad died, and he was retired military, and they just had so many beautiful things laid out over these different tables of his accomplishments and his family accomplishments with the 6 children that they had together, and that they were married for 70 plus years. It was really amazing. And just all these items of remembrances that were really there honoring her dad. And I found that I loved learning about people, going when I went to various family events, funerals, and then also clients that I didn't really know. It was really fascinating to meet and see all their children and all their grandchildren, and a lot of the travels that they took all over the world. Um, Also doing things like art and expression, like maybe painting and drawing, doing a grief collage, cutting out things that might help as a remembrance for your emotions. Sometimes music therapy is another thing that some people do, because music, I don't know about you, but if I hear a song, it takes me right back. And it's so funny because we used to go to Lake Placid to see my brother that was going to college up there. And my dad loved to listen to country music. It was not my first choice back then, but every time I hear Willie Nelson, On the Road Again, or like I can't think of some of the other, I think Johnny Cash was a really big one back then. But when I hear it, I was right away, it takes me back to who he was. And now I'm not in the active process of grieving, but just remembering that sometimes for me, it just brings it right up. But there's other things. Nature as a healer is another one. Planting a tree. I don't know if you've thought about this. Even now, when you post on a friend or a family's obituary site, a lot of times they can ask you to plant a tree in that person's honor. And I love this idea. I did that for a friend of ours, a neighbor whose son was 16 years old when he took his life, and I couldn't think of anything. To do other than having a tree planted in his honor. And I thought it was such a really beautiful remembrance of a life cut short. And so the family would have gotten information about that tree, which I think is beautiful, so they know where it's going to be planted. They could actually visit it. So I love that idea. But I also think walking in nature can be helpful. It helps kind of calm our central nervous system and regulate it, gives us this fresh air and perspective. And also a lot of people, and I'm a believer in this, I see birds wherever I go. And I see a lot of red birds in Maryland. They're absolutely beautiful. And I know a lot of people believe that they're being visited through birds. And I will tell you, I visited a woman who lived in Bethesda, Maryland one time. She was so sweet. She lived all alone, no children. Her husband had a high level position in, I don't believe it was Congress, but it was definitely in federal government. And she was 98 years old, and she needed someone to help her cook. She wanted to have certain things prepared. And when I came to visit her, she said, "There he is." And I looked over my shoulder, and she goes, "Look, he's listening to our conversation and watching." And I said, "Who's that?" And she said, "That's William. That's my husband. He is so nosy. He wants to know who's here, who's visiting, who's sitting in his chair." I was like, "Oh, wow." So I was like, "Hello." I thought it was cute. Anyway, I just feel like you're going to find certain things that are going to bring peace to your heart. And one of those, I think, is going to be being out in nature. A lot of people like to try to remember stories. A lot of people will, talk and have really great things to say about people during their services, as they're honoring them and eulogizing them. And sometimes if like I was unable to speak at my dad's funeral. I just couldn't do it. Because I'm a crier as it is, but I think writing a letter to that person over time, I sort of wish I had done this with my brother, because I was angry at him for so many years, that I feel like if I had just journaled it or maybe written him a letter, But over time, I came to understand that he was deeply, deeply in a lot of pain. So forgiveness is a huge thing when someone leaves, because a lot of times we hold anger at them, but it doesn't help us heal by doing that. I mean, a lot of times it is their journey, and we really can't stop anything um, from how it's supposed to roll out anyway. But writing a letter to someone expressing how much you miss them or how much you love them, and for all the great moments and great memories that you're going to keep of them in your heart. Um, some people do little rituals or ceremonies like lighting a candle. That was really important for my mother. She was really active in the Catholic Church back where I grew up, and um, her and her friends, one of her best friends also lost a child. So together they were honoring their birthdays and their celebration of life and doing different things, to help them. Another part of grieving that I think could be really helpful for a lot of people is daily movement. A lot of times we're so depleted emotionally that the exhaustion and grief and depression can be overwhelming. So over time, even just doing simple things like taking a shower and dressing appropriately to go out, instead of being and staying in your pajamas or doing something all day that is just, many times a lot of people can't, it takes weeks. But daily movement like yoga or Tai Chi, I think walking is the simplest thing that you can do. And these practices can help release the energy too that is stored. I encourage you to walk in nature and cry. I mean, I certainly did it for years off and on during certain times of my life, and it greatly helped me reduce anxiety. I would sometimes bring a little prayer book with me, and I would sometimes walk and read it or do the affirmations that were helpful to me as I was doing it. Since then, I've started listening more to music when I go, or I'll listen to like healing sound bowls and stuff like that. But I think during the initial grief period, I don't think listening, I think I needed to have nothing but sounds of nature to really help my body calm down. And you might find it helpful just to sit, even if you're just sitting outside listening to the morning birds. It's such a beautiful, I don't know what this word is, cacophony of, it's like a symphony of birdies in the morning, and it's so beautiful to listen to them. I think I saw this thing on PBS about that the birds start really early, and that's what opens the flowers. I never knew that. I don't think I even really noticed it in my lifetime, but that the sound of that does something to the trees and the flowers, which I thought was, there's no mistake. God did not make any mistakes when he created this planet, that's for sure. Some of the other things, aside from body movement, like is just listening to music, because I think it's very soothing for the heart, and it can distract your mind too a lot of times. I was working, but I think a lot of people, they want to stay busy, and a lot of times they're cleaning out the house, trying to make donations for that person, and doing different things that are going to keep you busy. But ultimately, I think joining a grief support group, and knowing that you're not alone, it could make a huge difference. And volunteering in their honor. So if someone died of cancer or had dementia, Alzheimer's, something, there's so many ways that we can volunteer and kind of be, like choosing a cause that they cared about or that impacted them when they were still living, I think could be really helpful. And then, spiritual reflection and practices, prayer, meditation, using guided visualization. There's so much free content. I don't know if you're a YouTuber, if you have a smartphone, but you can download so much free content that can help you. And over different times of grieving family members and friends and clients and things like that, just a lot of quiet, some quiet time daily was really helpful. To have quiet reflection and just let that person know. And sometimes, I think talking to that person, I'm the believer that our loved ones it's very thinly veiled from our life here to to the other side. And there's nothing wrong with talking to that person, feeling the energy of that person, giving you the hug, and knowing that you're still loved even though they're not here is, I think, really a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful way to start your morning. So grief is definitely a deeply personal journey. There's no right timeline or formula to it. It's going to be, again, a very personal journey for you. But allowing creative things that speak to your heart during this time of healing and doing your grief work is going to be your own personal journey. And find things that help you heal your mind too, because sometimes our racing thoughts and can be very exhausting for us. But carry the love that they had for you in your heart, and know that over time you are going to find new ways to heal your heart. And that's what I have for you today. So I hope this is helpful. I know we're all on a different path and journey of healing our hearts at various times of our lives. And I wish you all the very best on yours. I'm sending you a huge hug, and I'll see you at the next video.